read that for a wrongful death, he got paid $90 million for her death. Am I supposed to say that on TV? Sue me, I ain't got nothing. So I was really...
The internet was already on edge, but nobody expected this. One post, one caption, and suddenly a decades-old tragedy was back at the center of a storm. When Nicki Minaj shared a series of cryptic messages and resurfaced photos, fans were stunned. What was she implying? Why now? And why did it feel like a door everyone thought was sealed had just been kicked wide open? Within hours, timelines were flooded. Old interviews resurfaced, clips were dissected frame by frame. Allegations that had once lived in the shadows of forums and whispered conversations were suddenly trending again. Fans are shocked, critics are divided, and emotions ran high as social media users began connecting dots that many believed were long buried. Some are calling it accountability. Others say it is dangerous speculation. But one thing is certain, the conversation has turned dark. Questions about loyalty, protection, power, and silence are being asked louder than ever before. And as the online world debates what really happened, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. This story was never truly over. The moment Nicki's post started circulating, the atmosphere online shifted from curiosity to chaos. People were not just scrolling anymore, they were investigating. Fans began digging through archived interviews, blurry red carpet footage, and old magazine clippings as if they were piecing together a puzzle that had been scattered for decades. Emotions ran high across platforms. Some users defended the family fiercely, saying that tragedy should never be turned into spectacle. Others insisted that questions left unanswered are not disrespectful, they are necessary. What truly intensified the drama was not just what Nicki hinted at, but the timing. Many viewers began asking why this conversation always resurfaces in waves. One fan tweeted, "Every few years, something pulls us back to this story. Maybe we never got the full picture." That sentiment spread like wildfire. Podcasts began hosting emergency episodes. Commentary channels went live within hours. Everyone had a theory, and everyone claimed to have connected dots that had been overlooked before. In group chats and comment sections, the discussion quickly turned toward the people who were closest to her during her rise. Her mother, often described in past interviews as protective and present, suddenly became a focal point of heated debate. Fans are shocked at how quickly admiration turned into suspicion. Some argue that being a stage parent in a ruthless industry requires impossible decisions. Others whisper that protection and control can sometimes blur into something more complicated. "You mean to tell me nobody saw anything?" One viral comment read. "She was surrounded by powerful adults from such a young age." That line echoed across platforms, fueling speculation. Still, it is important to note that these are online conversations, not confirmed findings. But in the world of celebrity drama, perception often moves faster than proof. Old footage began circulating again, including moments where she appeared poised beyond her years. Viewers replayed interviews where she carefully avoided certain questions. In one resurfaced clip, when asked about personal rumors, she smiled politely and redirected the topic back to music. Now, years later, that smile is being interpreted in a dozen different ways. Was it media training? Was it pressure? Was it simply grace under scrutiny? Nobody can say for certain, yet the interpretations keep multiplying. Meanwhile, supporters of the family pushed back hard.
Talking a lot of smack. Talking about age ain't nothing but a number, girl. I was like, what you trying to say? So immediately I heard the song, and I said, I called her back 15 minutes later, told her, check this out. So we cut the track right then and there.
And for the record, you are how old? That's a secret. Women doesn't disclose her age.
Hard. This is painful and unfair, one longtime fan wrote. Losing a daughter is not something you recover from. The family was left divided in the court of public opinion, even if internally they have remained largely silent. And that silence has only intensified curiosity. In the absence of direct responses, the internet tends to fill gaps with its own narratives. Then there is the business side of the conversation. Industry watchers began revisiting contracts, label affiliations, and reported financial settlements. Numbers that once felt distant and technical are now being debated emotionally. Some users speculate about who benefited from certain outcomes, while others argue that legal settlements are common after tragic events and do not automatically suggest wrongdoing. Once again, these discussions are fueled by speculation rather than confirmed conclusions, yet they continue to trend. A particularly dramatic twist came when an old interview clip resurfaced featuring a family member discussing interview.
I am really busy with the career and the fact that I'm getting ready to go back to school, so I just see how it works in.
3 years ago, there was this terrible rumor out. What is the deal with you and R. Kelly? Are you all married or not?
No, I'm not married. Robert's doing his thing, I'm doing my thing. He's a great producer, great artist, who I do admire. And
pressures. In the clip, he admits that the music world can be ruthless and that young talent often depends on adults to navigate it. That statement, once seen as protective, is now being dissected under a darker lens. Fans are asking whether that navigation always prioritized safety over ambition. The emotional conflict in this? Debate is intense. On one side, you have those who believe the family did the best they could in a complicated environment. On the other, you have those who question whether ambition overshadowed caution. Behind the screens, other artists' names were pulled into the conversation. Photos from award shows and parties were reposted with captions highlighting age differences and industry dynamics. Some commentators emphasize that different times carried different standards, while critics argue that power imbalances are timeless issues. The discussion grew heavier by the hour. It was no longer just about one post from Nicki. It became about a broader conversation on how young stars are handled within entertainment systems. Inside fan communities, tensions flared. "Stop rewriting history," one user pleaded. "We loved her for her talent." Another replied, "Loving her means asking hard questions." The emotional stakes felt personal. For many, this is not simply celebrity gossip. It is about legacy, memory, and respect. And when legacy is involved, people do not hold back. Sources close to the family, according to online reports, have expressed frustration at the renewed speculation. Though no official statement has been released in response to this recent wave, insiders claim that revisiting painful chapters brings back grief that never truly faded. Again, these are reported sentiments circulating through media commentary, not direct confirmations, but they add another layer of tension to an already charged narrative. What makes this situation particularly complex is that the original tragedy involved multiple factors that were investigated at the time. Official findings were released, reports were documented, and legal processes unfolded. Yet, despite those conclusions, certain questions linger in the public imagination. Sometimes when information is technical or incomplete in the eyes of fans, imagination steps in to fill the silence. Nicki herself has not provided a detailed explanation for her posts. She has a history of speaking out when she feels narratives are one-sided or when she believes hypocrisy exists in the industry. Whether her recent activity was meant to spark accountability or simply provoke conversation remains unclear. That ambiguity is part of what keeps this story alive. When intent is uncertain, speculation grows. As commentators continue to analyze every detail, one truth remains consistent. Emotions are deeply intertwined with this story. Grief, admiration, suspicion, loyalty, and outrage all coexist in the same timeline. The family was left divided in the eyes of viewers. Fans are shocked by the resurfaced clips, and industry veterans are watching quietly from the sidelines. What began as a few posts has evolved into a full-scale re-examination of history, not because new evidence has been officially presented, but because public interest has reignited. And when public interest catches fire, especially in entertainment culture, it spreads fast and burns hot. As the online storm kept building, more layers of the story began surfacing in ways nobody anticipated. Commentator channels replayed old red carpet interviews where she stood beside powerful figures in the industry, smiling softly while flashbulbs exploded around her. Viewers paused the clips, zoomed in, analyzed body language, and debated tone. Fans are shocked at how differently those same moments feel when viewed through a modern lens. What once looked like a young star confidently navigating fame now appears to some like someone carefully coached on what not to say. The emotional conflict surrounding her mother intensified as old profiles and biographies were brought back into circulation. Articles describing a devoted parent who traveled everywhere with her daughter were reposted alongside more skeptical takes questioning how much oversight was truly possible in such a fast-moving industry. "Being present is not the same as being aware," one commentator said during a live stream that quickly gained thousands of viewers. That single sentence ignited hours of debate. Supporters insisted that it is unfair to assume negligence without proof. Critics argued that patterns of silence often speak louder than public statements. In the middle of this whirlwind, fans revisited the early days of her career. Stories of auditions, studio sessions, and late-night rehearsals flooded timelines. There were accounts of her extraordinary professionalism at a young age, stories about how she carried herself with maturity far beyond her years. But that same maturity is now being reframed by some as a possible shield. People began asking whether she had to grow up too fast to survive in a world filled with older executives and established artists. A particularly viral thread broke down her first major album era, pointing out the intense scrutiny she faced even as a teenager. The thread did not accuse anyone directly, but it raised questions about who had the final say in creative decisions and public narratives. Fans are shocked at how contracts and mentorships that once seemed glamorous now appear complicated. The conversation shifted from pure nostalgia to something heavier, almost investigative. Then came the business angle. Reports from years ago about label disputes and financial settlements were reposted with dramatic captions. While official records remain part of public documentation, the internet began interpreting those numbers emotionally rather than legally. "Money changes everything," one user wrote. "Follow the money and you'll find the motive." Others pushed back immediately, reminding viewers that settlements after tragedies are often standard legal procedures and do not automatically suggest wrongdoing. Still, the phrase spread rapidly, and with it came more speculation. Old interviews featuring family members were dissected in detail. In one clip, a relative insisted that they had no knowledge of certain behind-the-scenes dynamics during her early career. Viewers replayed the footage repeatedly, debating tone and facial expressions. Some felt the denial sounded genuine, others claimed it felt rehearsed. Emotions ran high in comment sections as strangers argued over interpretations of seconds-long pauses and subtle shifts in posture. Friends and collaborators from that era were also pulled into the narrative. Photos from award shows and backstage events resurfaced, showing her surrounded by established artists. Commentators highlighted age gaps and power dynamics, noting how different industry standards were decades ago. Defenders argued that judging the past by today's expectations can distort context. Critics insisted that power imbalance is timeless and deserves scrutiny regardless of era. The debate became less about a single family and more about systemic issues in entertainment. Meanwhile, some fans expressed discomfort with the entire direction of the conversation. "This is starting to feel like we are rewriting her story, instead of honoring it," one longtime supporter commented during a live broadcast. That sentiment resonated with many who feel protective of her legacy. To them, reopening painful chapters risks overshadowing her artistry and accomplishments. Yet others countered that discussing uncomfortable possibilities does not diminish her talent. Instead, they argue it could highlight the pressure she endured. Behind the scenes, insiders have reportedly expressed frustration at the renewed spotlight. While no official statement has addressed the recent wave directly, media outlets claim that those close to the family feel blindsided by the intensity of the online reaction. Again, these reports come from secondary commentary rather than confirmed declarations, but they add to the sense of tension building around the situation. Nicki's role in all of this remains somewhat ambiguous. She has not issued a formal explanation clarifying her exact intent. Her posts were brief, pointed, and open to interpretation. Some believe she wanted to highlight inconsistencies and how certain industry figures are treated. Others think she may have been drawing attention to historical double standards. Whatever her motivation, the effect was undeniable. A conversation that had faded into background memory is now front and center again. During a heated panel discussion on a popular entertainment podcast, one host said, "Sometimes silence protects, and sometimes silence hides." That quote quickly circulated across social media, further fueling debate. The emotional stakes are deeply personal for fans who grew up idolizing her. Many feel torn between loyalty to her memory and curiosity about unanswered questions. The family was left divided in the eyes of the public, even though there is no visible evidence of division internally. As the days passed, the narrative grew darker, not because new official information surfaced, but because interpretation layered upon interpretation created a snowball effect. Speculation about early industry relationships, contract structures, and management decisions merged into one sprawling theory web. No single thread provided definitive answers, yet together they painted a picture that some viewers find unsettling. What complicates matters further is the official record regarding the tragedy that ended her life. Investigations at the time documented findings related to the aircraft, weight limits, and pilot qualifications. Those reports remain accessible. Yet despite official conclusions, lingering doubts have always existed within certain corners of the internet. Now, with renewed attention sparked by celebrity commentary, those doubts are being amplified again. In private messages and public forums alike, people ask the same haunting question. Was everything handled the way it should have been? It is a question driven more by emotion than evidence, yet it persists. And as long as that question lingers, the conversation refuses to settle. What began as a few cryptic posts has evolved into an emotional reckoning across fan communities. Admiration, suspicion, grief, and anger coexist in the same digital space. Fans are shocked by how quickly old memories transformed into fresh controversy. Emotions ran high as each side defended its perspective with intensity. And at the center of it all remains a legacy that continues to inspire millions, even as the story surrounding it grows more complex by the day. The complexity only deepened when independent bloggers began revisiting the final days before the tragedy. Timelines were reconstructed almost minute by minute, based entirely on publicly available reports and previously published interviews. Viewers leaned in closer as commentators described the atmosphere surrounding that last trip. According to documented accounts, there were concerns about the aircraft's capacity and the overall situation at the airstrip. These details were not new, yet hearing them retold with dramatic pauses and emotional emphasis gave them a different weight. One viral livestream featured a host saying, "If someone expressed hesitation, why was that hesitation dismissed?" That question echoed across social media. Fans are shocked at how many small details feel larger when placed under a spotlight. Again, it is important to stress that these conversations are built around reports and testimonies that have circulated for years, not newly verified revelations. But repetition has a powerful effect. When something is repeated enough times, it begins to feel freshly discovered. Some online users pointed to accounts claiming she did not initially want to board the flight. These accounts have been referenced in books and interviews before, though interpretations vary. Now, those same claims are being discussed with renewed intensity. "If she was uncomfortable, that matters," one commenter wrote. Others responded by reminding everyone that chaotic travel days often include confusion and conflicting recollections. The truth of what happened in those final moments has long been summarized in official findings, yet alternative interpretations continue to resurface. The discussion then turned toward responsibility. Not legal responsibility, which was addressed through official channels years ago, but moral responsibility. Fans began debating what duty guardians, managers, and team members carry when overseeing young artists in high-pressure situations. Emotions ran high during panel discussions where industry insiders described how difficult it can be to balance schedules, budgets, and safety. One former tour manager explained, "Sometimes decisions are made quickly under pressure, and hindsight always looks clearer." That statement drew mixed reactions. Some appreciated the honesty, others felt it sounded like an excuse. As speculation intensified, the focus drifted back to family dynamics. Viewers replayed interviews where her mother spoke about being protective and hands-on. Supporters insist that those interviews reflect genuine love and dedication. Critics question whether constant proximity automatically translates to complete awareness. The family was left divided in online narratives, even though no concrete evidence suggests internal conflict. Perception, however, can be powerful. Once doubt enters a storyline, it tends to linger. Another dramatic twist came when financial documents related to business dealings were shared across forums. These were not secret files, but previously reported agreements and legal arrangements. Still, stripped of context and presented alongside ominous music and commentary videos, they appeared suspicious to some viewers. Fans are shocked at how numbers on a page can feel like clues in a mystery. Legal experts on talk shows attempted to clarify that settlements and liability clauses are common in high-risk industries, yet those clarifications struggled to compete with emotionally charged speculation. Nicki's name continued to trend alongside these discussions. While she has not directly elaborated beyond her initial posts, supporters argue that she merely reignited a conversation that was already simmering beneath the surface. Critics say that public figures carry influence and must consider how their words impact grieving families. The debate about her intent became almost as heated as the debate about the original tragedy. One radio host commented, "Sometimes stirring the pot reveals hidden ingredients, and sometimes it just makes a mess." That metaphor spread quickly. Meanwhile, longtime collaborators of the late star have remained largely quiet. Their silence is being interpreted in different ways. Some believe it shows respect for the family's privacy. Others suspect it reflects discomfort with the direction of the discourse. Without direct statements, every absence of comment becomes its own talking point. In the world of celebrity drama, silence rarely goes unnoticed. Fans who grew up idolizing her voice and style expressed emotional exhaustion. "I just want to remember her for the music," one message read during the live chat. Yet curiosity keeps pulling the conversation back to unresolved feelings. Admiration and investigation now exist side by side. The legacy that once felt uncomplicated has taken on new shades of gray in the eyes of certain viewers. What complicates the situation further is how time reshapes narratives. Decades ago, information traveled slower. Rumors faded before gaining momentum. Today, social media archives everything. Old interviews are one click away. Statements made in passing can resurface and be analyzed through a completely different cultural lens. The shift in societal awareness about power dynamics adds another layer to how people interpret history. During a heated debate segment, one commentator said, "We are not claiming anything happened differently than reported. We are asking why certain questions never stopped being asked." That distinction matters. It reflects the careful balance many content creators are attempting to maintain between commentary and accusation. Yet even cautious phrasing cannot fully contain the emotional charge of the topic. As days turned into a full week of trending hashtags, the tone of the conversation grew heavier. Theories overlapped, timelines blurred, speculation expanded beyond specific events into broader discussions about how young talent is protected in entertainment spaces. Some viewers began connecting unrelated incidents from the industry's past, creating a larger narrative about systemic issues. Others warned against conflating separate stories without evidence. Through it all, one truth remains undeniable. The renewed attention has forced people to revisit a chapter many thought was closed. Fans are shocked at how quickly nostalgia turned into interrogation. Emotions ran high as defenders and skeptics clashed in comment sections. The family was left divided in public perception, even if privately they remain united in grief. And as more commentary videos continue to surface, each adding its own interpretation and dramatic flair, the story feels less like a static memory and more like a living conversation that refuses to fade. As the conversation refused to cool down, a new layer of drama entered the picture. Entertainment commentators began inviting psychologists, former label executives, and cultural critics onto livestream panels to unpack not just the events themselves, but the emotional weight surrounding them. Suddenly, the debate was no longer only about what happened years ago. It became about power, silence, influence, and how young artists are shaped by the systems around them. One panel discussion in particular went viral after a guest said, "Sometimes the truth is not hidden, it is normalized." That single sentence ignited thousands of reactions. Fans are shocked at how quickly the focus shifted from one family to entire industry culture. Viewers began asking whether certain dynamics that were once considered standard practice would now raise red flags. The past started looking unfamiliar through a modern lens. Old award show footage was replayed again, this time slowed down and narrated dramatically. Commentators pointed out who stood next to her, who guided her through interviews, who answered questions on her behalf. None of this footage was new, yet the narration transformed it into something heavier. "Watch how she glances before answering," one host said. "Watch who steps in." Interpretations varied wildly. Some saw mentorship, others sensed control. Without concrete proof, these readings remain subjective, but they fuel engagement nonetheless. The emotional stakes grew even more intense when fan pages dedicated to preserving her memory began speaking out. Administrators of tribute accounts posted messages urging followers to remain respectful. "Honor her artistry first," one post read. But even within those communities, disagreements surfaced. Some believe protecting her legacy means avoiding controversial speculation. Others argue that protecting her legacy means confronting uncomfortable possibilities. The family was left divided in public commentary once again, even though no direct statement has confirmed any internal discord. Perception is shaping the narrative more than verified developments. That tension is palpable across every platform. Meanwhile, industry veterans have offered carefully worded responses when asked about the renewed spotlight. One former producer, speaking on a radio segment, said, "That era had its own standards and its own blind spots. He did not accuse anyone, he did not defend anyone either. His tone was reflective, almost weary. Still, his words were clipped and reposted repeatedly, framed as subtle confirmation by some viewers." Another dramatic twist emerged when archived magazine interviews were revisited. In those pieces, she often spoke about ambition, resilience, and trust. At the time, those quotes were seen as empowering. Now, some readers question whether trust in powerful figures always led to safe outcomes. Again, these are interpretations layered onto historical text, not new disclosures. Yet they resonate because the audience is primed to look deeper. Nicki's involvement continues to loom over the entire discourse. Supporters argue that she is challenging inconsistencies in how certain figures have been treated over time. Critics claim that reopening old wounds without presenting new evidence risks amplifying rumors rather than clarity. One entertainment analyst summarized it this way: "Intention may be accountability, but impact can still be chaos." That statement captured the mood perfectly. Fans are shocked by how emotionally draining the conversation has become. What started as intrigue has evolved into something almost existential. For many, this is not just about celebrity news. It touches on themes of exploitation, loyalty, and whether justice always looks the way we expect it to. Emotions ran high in comment sections, where strangers debated with surprising intensity. The narrative has also begun to split into two dominant paths. One path focuses strictly on documented events, official investigations, and legal outcomes. The other path leans into unresolved feelings, perceived inconsistencies, and cultural context. These two paths rarely intersect peacefully. When they clash, accusations of insensitivity and denial fly in both directions.